What
Mm,
was the pay scenario like back in 1990s? Take a wild
yeah,
guess, Gerald. What do you think that number is?
two or 1006. My mom was a diploma. 1006, she shared with me.
2006.
The Joshtantap Show.
Hi guys, welcome in. Today we are going to talk about HDB flats and we have Gerald Ong.
Hey everyone, it's Gerald. Nice to meet you.
Today, Gerald, we're going to talk about this topic. Are home prices getting too expensive? And maybe I can give everybody some backdrop. This year we've seen so many $1 million HDB flats, 365 to be exact. And of them, 75 are maisonettes. So we've seen maisonettes getting so many big transaction numbers. And the latest one actually is one that is in Jurong East. This has actually cracked the $1 million mark. Maisonettes, they are so big. And maybe it's a good place to start our whole discussion, Gerald. Do you think these maisonettes are a good deal or not?
For me, no. But let's talk about what I think. I try to put my mind in the perspective of a buyer, right? I don't think maisonettes are young couples living by themselves. I would argue that it's at least three gens, or if not downgraders, right? Like if you win it big from en bloc, then you decide, hey, I want a two-story flat. You want something that's atas, but not like a penthouse, which is like crazy expensive. A more budget version of a penthouse, then yeah, Maisonette sounds perfect, right? So that's where I think this comes into play. The headline's always about big numbers, like it's $1 million HDB. No one's going to talk about the $300,000 BTO that's coming up in the newspaper, lah. So
Later we'll talk about it, not to worry. Because today's topic, what, is it too unaffordable? But this maisonettes, what I hear from you is you believe they are three generational families trying to stay inside it. Just to give some context, these maisonettes, they are so big. If I'm not wrong, they are like 1,005, 1,006 square feet, which means that they have multiple bedrooms, like three or four easily. I've been to one myself, and it was really quite an eye opener to see the stairs and the rooms are upstairs, very nice. And there's like three bathrooms, which means like there can be so many adults are staying together in one whole family itself. So these maisonettes, if we were to look at some data points, the Toei one actually transacted at 805 per square foot. Again, that's a 35-year-old maisonette that costs $1.3
wow.
million. Yes, so
Mm,
it's not a young maisonette some more. But this
mm,
Jurong East one is a bit younger. It's only 26 years old. And the transaction PSF is 640. So, Gerald, I have a
mm.
question for you. $640 PSF for a 26-year-old house. How does that relate, to some other comparable ones in Jurong, maybe?
Yeah, so if we look at other property prices in Jurong, actually Jurong, when I try to search, right, there's not a lot of properties at the same age. It's always further out, like in the Boon Lay, Pioneer area. We did manage to find one property. I think it's slightly cheaper, about 610 per square foot, right? In terms of prices, the Maisonette seems to be at a slight premium, but it's marginal, right, compared to the other property. But now that I think about it, the Toei one, $800 per square foot, that is a lot. I think this begs the question, are Maisonettes priced at a premium? It seems to be that they are priced slightly at a premium because all else being equal, if they're the same per square foot and they're older, they're priced at a premium. So yeah, relatively speaking, they are a bit because of the demand or rarity of them, because HDB stopped making them since the year 1995. Seems that the market do price it a slight premium for them compared to the rest of the HDBs.
So you feel that buying something that's younger is going to be a better deal than buying something that's older, even though it's rare in that sense. What's your take on things?
Yes, all else being equal, definitely a younger flat is better lah, because of Bala's curve ma. So Bala's curve is basically a depreciation chart for HDB. So HDB, they don't depreciate linearly. It's like an exponential scale. So at the start, it depreciates very slowly, but prices in general, they increase. So the appreciation is more than a depreciation. So prices go up. But there comes a point of time, right, where once the flat is old enough, the depreciation is so fast because it's exponential that every year you see the property prices go down, down, down. Like I think those 50-year-old flats, every year you see the prices most likely going down because depreciation is very high during those later part of the years.
So it's a
So
lease decay thing that affects all 99-year leases.
correct. Yeah. So at the end of 99 years, all HDB flat goes to zero. So yeah, don't take the risk.
And don't scare people. So don't scare you. Maybe some families do value this, or maybe if that buyer is someone older and then not too concerned about using the house for 60 years and stuff. But again, maisonettes, they have stairs for any family with elderly. I also am concerned how to stay in it comfortably.
Maisonettes, right? Typically, the structure is that ground floor is living room, second floor would be where the bedrooms are. So then there is a flight of stairs that you need to climb. So if you have physically challenged family members, or let's say aging grandparents who struggle with mobility, right? Climbing this flight of stairs will become a significant challenge because you need to do it daily basis. Same with terrace house lah. But terrace house you can install a lift.
That's true. That's true. And they're also not cheap. Also, you spend $1 million plus, and you want to stay inside for a period, not a couple of years only. And that backs to the next question, which is: are homes getting too expensive? Because $1.3 million HDB flat, $1 million flat in Jurong. I'd like to pull up a IG post that influencer Jade Rasif has actually mentioned before. Quoting from her, she went house hunting and prices seem astronomical in Singapore now. We have tons of houses, but they aren't homes. People don't live in them. They are just sitting blocks of investors' money. By the time her kids are 18 years old, she's concerned whether she can afford a home for them. So when I saw that post, I was also thinking, is she looking at private houses or is she looking at HDB flats? Because for private houses, yes, there could be investors. But HDB flats, we can't invest in it. Right? We have to stay inside it. Recently there's this whole saga about 53 cases of people selling their flats when they didn't actually stay inside, because minimum occupancy period means you have to stay inside. So it's definitely not investors' money in HDB flats. But what are your thoughts on what Jade has voiced out? Are future generations of Singaporeans able to afford a home or not?
I think this one must look at the data a little bit more thoroughly. If you look from the surface, every time you hear the big news or prices are getting higher and higher every single year. But it's because there's inflation in the economy. So a healthy economy, prices should go up lah. So then, salaries go up, home prices go up. That's good, So if you own a home, you actually earn. But at the same time, if you want to buy a house, your salary also increase over time. Logically, scary to think that prices are going up. But actually, when you dig into the actual numbers, because if you look at affordability, it's always home prices relative to your income, right? It's always a ratio thing. If the ratio stays the same, then actually affordability hasn't changed at all. The government actually made a lot of statements regarding affordability, right? I think what they use is the home price to income ratio. They try to keep it under 4 for Singaporeans. From that point of view, it's affordable. And I think Josh shared with me this formula, the 335 formula, which is 30% of monthly income, 30% of down payment, and 5 times annual income for the family. So based on this metric, right, actually homes are very affordable all around Singapore. Of course, if you look at like the most expensive, it's crazy scary. But if you look at what the latest BTO came out numbers, it seems quite reasonable. In fact, the one that caught my attention is that in Singapore, there's actually a 5-digit flat after subsidies in Bukit Batok. That's what caught my attention.
I think we need to clarify also, this data point of the home price to income is for BTO flats. So some people might actually be overstretching themselves in private estates. That's possible. But for BTOs where government has full control, they've actually kept this affordability. Kudos to them in that sense also. The mortgage servicing ratio, 25%. The average people is just using 25% of their income. The CPFO itself can fund it, which is good. You don't use your cash. You can use that cash to bring up family and stuff. And the price of the home is always the biggest expense that most families have. And to the point of 5-digit flats, that one comes after grants also. So government does indeed have a lot of good grants to help new couples start families. They include proximity housing grants, enhanced housing grants, which is related to income. So for lower income families, the grants are really big, could be up to $80,000. So as we scroll through this list, we can see differences in prices. Like Tengah has 3-room BTOs going at 200,000. But if you want a more mature estate, you'll see that Queenstown, for example, is closing at 400,000. But these are still numbers that, according to HDB has mentioned, these are definitely still affordable. 400,000 for 3-room flat is definitely still affordable for most families. Then what about some other older data? How has prices appreciated over the years that would really dispel this myth of home prices rising too quickly?
I found this data of the per square foot comparison based on district. So I think this includes private housing and government housing. So this is by stacked homes, right? So if you look at the percentages, I don't know why District 1 the prices dropped, but other than that, every one of them increased at least 2 digits, with like District 6 rising as much as like 150% over the past 9 years from 2010 to 2019, right? So Again, if we compare apples to apples, we look at Jurong East. The rise is 25% over 10 years. It sounds a lot, but actually, if you divide it to 10 years, it breaks down to about 2% per annum, and 2% is not very scary. I think most of us, our income rise much more than 2% per year, right, based on pay raises. And if you don't look at the lower one, you look at the larger, let's say District 6, District 7, right? If you break it down per annum, it's also only about 8%, right? Increment. So it's not too far off from the growth rate of our incomes, I think. Basically, homes are not getting less and less affordable relative to income.
I think it's just a number that scares people, correct? Or
Yeah,
$1 million
it's
flat
very
or $500,000 BTO. But we forget that, in terms of percentage increment, is a gradual climb across the years. And it just takes some getting used to also. It also rounds back to the point. Last time's affordability and now affordability is still roughly the same, which means, people can still pay and start their first homes quite easily. I think that's very different from Hong Kong, whereby there are real concerns because data has shown that some families take 20 years of income just to pay off housing loans. And some of their waiting periods can be up to 6 years versus what we see here in Singapore, which is 4 or 5 years at most. That also leads to a concern that I saw on forums. Let me quote from this remark over there. My parents bought their freehold condo for 700,000 in 1990s. Their neighbor has actually just sold a smaller unit for $2.8 million. Salaries have increased since 1990, but definitely not at fourfold in amount. But I've actually dug important information to share with you listening in today. What was the pay scenario like back in 1990s? Take a wild guess, Gerald. What do you think that number is?
When was that again? 90 what?
1990s.
That's when my parents were young. Based on what they shared with me, I think it was 2002 or 2006. My mom was a diploma. 2006, she shared
2006.
with me.
Actually, the gross median wage back in 1991 to 1995 was only $1,085. So your mom earned above that median wage. When we compare, last time average is 1,085. Now it's 4,006. Has pay not increased by 4 times plus? It's also a perspective thing. So I think if we were to reflect back, price gone up fourfold, but pay has increased fourfold also. Then maybe the equation of affordability is still holding intact.
Just the numbers look bigger.
So if we were to project forward, 18 years later, maybe the average wage becomes $8,000-$9,000. Then home prices, you realize 2 million, 3 million flats are getting quite common in that sense. So we need to get used to numbers and headlines sometimes and not get too fearful. What are your last thoughts, Gerald, on this affordability concern?
On one hand, when we try to rationalize, we look at the data and the numbers, it does make sense. But I think there's a lot of sharing, right, amongst us folks when we think about, the homes in Singapore getting smaller and smaller, right? And then the price getting higher and higher. So then there is the impression that as time goes by, we are only able to afford smaller and smaller homes. So then eventually all the youngsters in Singapore can only afford like shoebox homes in the future, right? They cannot afford anything else. But income data seems to suggest otherwise. As long as you get a decent job, you study hard, you work well, on average, you should be able to afford a decent sized home, at least now or in the foreseeable future.
So you believe the next generation should be okay. If they were to buy BTOs, it's definitely still affordable. The only question is if it's private and stuff where market forces can pull up prices differently.
Yeah. Private is very unpredictable because anyone can buy, not just Singaporeans, it's the whole world. Whereas HDB is only limited to Singaporeans and PRs, right?
So coming to here, maybe we'll also pose this question to you listening in. Do you think home prices are really climbing too fast and getting unaffordable? You're worried about next generation. So leave your thoughts and comments in the sections below. Gerald, thank you for coming in for today's discussion.
Hey, it's a pleasure. It's really nice to chat on this topic. It's a big problem.
Together, we'll see you in the next episode.
Okay, bye everyone.
Take care and goodbye.